Thank you for the introduction. It's great to be here again in Munich. So I want to talk about tokenized ownership from DAOs to GmbH. People would usually think a different way, like GmbH, the German limited, and then we had DAOs. But having now experienced this since 2014, I just want to give you a short summary of what happened since then and all those crazy token worlds and where we stand and what is a short outlook into the future. Now, taking it even more back, like 19th century, the firm is kind of a big invention in economics. In the beginning, people had personal reliability, they were responsible for what they did. When they made mistakes, their life could be economically over. And so the limited was created, a way to have a limited liability company. Then shares were created that investors could invest into companies buying shares. And it has such a tremendous impact on the world, how much value that has been created, how much companies have been created, which otherwise would not exist. So this is of extreme value. And we have seen this now since over 100 years, but actually legally and also technically, not much has changed over the last 100 years. So ownership usually shares, now taking as an example the German GmbH, but this is similar for others, are managed either in a national register, in Germany it's the Handelsregister, or just contracts, validly signed, stored in the company safe somewhere, held by the company. Change of ownership, which is the interesting part. So I'm a business angel in over a dozen companies, and I've invested in companies in Switzerland, in Estonia, in Germany, abroad, US, and it's absolutely not standardized. You get different contracts from everyone, you have different ways of investing, and if you do checks between 10 and 100K, you don't want to hire a lawyer to go through everything, it just is not worth it. So business angel investment in Europe is actually a total mess, and also if you think globally. So this change of ownership happens, signing contracts, convertible notes, and I hate convertible notes. They're terrible for founders. You have downside protection for investors, they're non-dilutive, so each of them adds up, and even there's so many things, and you have a maturity date. Why do you have a maturity date when you invest in a company? Convertible notes are just not a good tool, but they are there because of bureaucracy and many other reasons. They said, well, it's quick, you just have a contract, it's not much work. But as a founder, I have signed convertible notes, and as a business angel, I actually do not like them, especially compared to what I've seen in Web3. Then many invest in rounds, of synchronous rounds, C, Series A, B, C, D. Why not making this completely continuous? Why do you need such rounds? So often that you had here in the panel, one question was, how can I invest? And yes, there are some platforms which are starting to make this possible, but it's mostly still professionals like VCs and business angels doing those investments, most of the rounds. It's not much coming from your actual users or your community, as it should be. And you have very poor liquidity. The most GmbH shares are not liquid. You cannot easily sell and buy them. There are huge hurdles. It's all possible, but it's not easy. So that's just as an intro, what we have right now. So enter Web3. Now I want to tell you shortly a story about the DAO. I don't know who have lived through this. This was 2016, because this kind of started a lot of what you saw with all those tokens and ICOs, many of this. So in 2016, I was very naive and young. And so my brother, another founder, we worked for the Ethereum Foundation, and we saw how great this technology is. We now have this platform, we have Ethereum, we have smart contracts, where we could encode business rules or business logic. And one idea we always had was building a decentralized, autonomous organization. So this was a radical and somewhat inspirational dream. And we basically wrote a smart contract which rules where everybody in the world, permissionless, could put money in the form of the virtual currency Ether into the contract, get a token as a representation of ownership, and then would be a member of this DAO. And then they collectively would manage the funds in there and could do whatever they want with it. They could build a company, they could ask someone to do something, they could invest, whatever they want. It's a long story, but long story short, back then we had the idea of a universal sharing economy, but I don't want to get into this. But the DAO itself was also a huge success and disaster. So the DAO was only code, and it was at a stage where the tools for this were very, very young and early. And the DAO raised 11.49 million Ether. So one Ether is right now roughly 1,500 euros, so you can calculate today how many billions this would be. Back then it was roughly $160 million, then the price of Ether went up, so it was $250 million in a time of 4 weeks. This was completely insane. In 2016, this was the largest crowdfunding ever. After that came bigger ones. So it showed that from all over the world, people invested, and we had no idea who it was. We had roughly 20,000 addresses, so addresses on the Ethereum blockchain, but one person could have many addresses, or one address could be from an exchange owned by many persons. So we do not know exactly how many persons actually invested, just how many addresses. So this was an extreme event. Back in 2016, we were all over the news, even New York Times and many others. So it was a big story, but it failed afterwards. So this is just a token distribution. You saw that it had a lot of small investors and big ones. So we had about 42% were held by the top 50 owners, and the rest were held by the other, let's say, roughly 23,000 something addresses. So when people say it's democratic, no, it's plutocratic. Most of blockchain stuff is very capitalism and plutocratic in reality. That's just how it is. But it's permissionless entry. And that's the most important point. Everybody globally can deploy a smart contract, invest in something, and use it. That's very special. So this was just the start. It failed because there was a bug in the smart contract, and a hacker were able to get stolen $50 million, and then started something like what we call the DAO wars. We hacked them back, and it was a total disaster and total mess. In the end, everybody got their money back through a so-called hard fork on Ethereum. But it's not a topic of today. That's why I don't want to go in depth. There are 3 books written about it. 2 movies are being made about it right now. One of them most likely on Netflix. So you can watch them later, just about this story of the DAO, which was so extreme and intense. That's why I like this story here, this quote: "You never know how far you can go until you've gone too far." Yes, we went too far with this very radical experiment, but we learned a lot from it. So what happened? So I want to go now through the learnings and tell you about what happened afterwards and where we are today. First of all, tokens in itself work. Tokens are just on a blockchain, represent something. Could be a security, could be nothing, could be something else, and are owned by someone having a private key to it. The first one actually was Bitcoin. Bitcoin having its own blockchain, everybody knows it as a form of digital currency with the aim of being a store of value. Ethereum, when we created it, we thought of it not as a store of value or a currency. We called it the oil compared to the gold of Bitcoin, meaning it's the oil to keep the platform running. You could run decentralized applications on Ethereum, but it also needed its own token, which of course today, because the platform is used that much, has also high value. Then we had the DAO, which I just explained. Afterwards, we had tons of scammy ICOs. So everybody was just raising money with an ICO, creating a token, collecting millions of dollars. 95% or even more were just scams. So, and this, you still have this today. So if you Google or go on YouTube and go to blockchain, Ethereum, 99% of what you see are scams and token pumps and dumps and buy here and sell there. So that's just the matter of fact. Then you have a permissionless system where everybody can do whatever they want. You just have to live with the consequences, and a part of this are those scams. But what happened afterwards? So in 2000, maybe just one slide. This is the money raised by tokens or ICOs between 2015 and end of 2018. So you see the DAO is just this little spike there in 2016. But afterwards, you see billions of dollars. Like at the top, this was beginning 2018, 2,432 millions. So $2.4 billion were raised through tokens. But what happened after this ICO boom? Well, the regulators came, say you cannot do it like this. You can't just sell something which not just looks like security, but technically is a security. So people then just separated more between so-called utility tokens and security tokens. Utility tokens being, as it says, just a utility, like a paper which says you can use my product later, mostly. And with clever tokenomics, how they call it, they try to link the value of the product to the token. But it's always you're legally on thin ice with most of those utility tokens. Then you had security tokens. Security tokens, yes, they represent a security, like a share in a company, and a bond or something else. The problem we had with this is they did not change at all the existing system. They just said, well, here's a company, here's a share, here's how we do this with all the extra rules and all the stuff and all the bonds, and then we also give you a token representing your ownership. But it's just on top. So it's actually just creating more hassle. So even though I like the idea of security tokens being legally compliant tokens, practically they added more hassle than they took away. And it didn't give actually that much more liquidity and all the nice things you saw in this token world. Because as I said in the beginning, investing as a business angel in traditional companies is a huge hassle. I need tons of meetings. I actually would need a lawyer, but I don't take one. I just sign. But that's how it is. But if I just invest in a token-based project, it takes me about 2 minutes going on Uniswap, swapping Ether to the token, I'm done. And that's such an easy process, and it's so much easier that that's how startup investment should be for retail and for others. So this just as a beginning. So what other learnings that we have? Governance. Today, I do not believe anymore that DAOs or decentralized autonomous organizations are good for building a product. They are very good for public good and maintenance of something like this. So maintaining the Ethereum network, maintaining other kind of public goods which are big, which are more like protocols, like Filecoin or ENS is a good example. ENS DAO is managing the ENS protocol. ENS stands for Ethereum Name Service. So those .eth names, maybe you came across those domains. So if you have a protocol which is decentralized in nature, then you want to have a DAO managing it. But if you want to build a product, then you see that a GmbH or a strongly hierarchical company with a CEO and a strong team are the best way to do this. And that's why, where's the link? DAOs are those decentralized, somehow communities which have a very messy governance, and then those GmbH have a strict governance, but they don't benefit from those token-based shares, which DAOs, for example, do, which can scale very quickly globally. That's what we have seen the last years. DAOs grown so quickly just because the access is permissionless. You can just go there, become a member, just invest $1,000 or even $1. You're a member, you have something to say there, you're part of this community. How do I get into, let's say, SpaceX? I really have no chance to really become an investor there easily, directly, as being, not of course on their board, but having something to say based on my ownership. And being part of the SpaceX community is almost impossible. So, but we saw tokens are really, really good for managing ownership. But, as we say, do not put new wine in old wineskins. That's from the New Testament. And that's what security tokens have been doing. They're just using those old securities and just saying we now add a token on top of it, which just represents exactly what we have done so far. I like this quote a lot by Buckminster Fuller. He said, "You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete." And this thinking is what you find in the Ethereum community a lot. That's how we build Ethereum, that's how we build the DAO. Mostly didn't care about the existing system, just build something as it's supposed to be and see if it gets traction or not. And how can we bridge this gap now between normal GmbHs or limited liability companies and this shiny new Web3 token-based world with all those benefits? So we try to build something which is, from a perspective of a founder and of a business angel, I would call it as it's supposed to be. How do I like investments? So first, I like to have a token. Why? I actually own it with my private key. This token can be used in the Web3 ecosystem, such as DeFi. DeFi stands for decentralized finance, and there are protocols out there which can give me a yield. I can use it as collateral to give myself a loan. All those nice things out there, and I can just use them directly, but I need tokenized shares. Otherwise, I have no access to this DeFi world. I actually also like to call it programmable equity. If Bitcoin or Ether, especially Ether, is something like programmable money, then those tokens can be something like programmable equity. So you could have in your software, if your user uses your product, he automatically gets X tokens. And I think it's a nice feature. Or your employees, you can have those vesting contracts with a cliff, all of those things, have it as software. You have now your equity as a token, meaning it's programmable, and developers can do a lot of fun stuff with it. So then the investment, instead of convertible notes, I like priced rounds, which have a fixed price. You know what's the market cap. Price goes down if the project goes down. Price goes up if the project goes well. No downside protection, no non-dilutive clauses, no preference rights for other investors coming later. So that's actually a huge step. What we saw from the ICO world, each token was alike. So they were fungible. And in the investment world from GmbH, I see every investor getting different terms. Technically, their shares are not fungible because the terms are attached to those shares, and so you cannot easily just exchange them as tokens. So it's important for liquidity and for investment purposes that all tokens have the exact same rights as you saw on the DAO and in many of the good ICOs or token-based projects. Second thing is, I hate rounds. Why don't you have continuous fundraising? Why is there a, as we said here in the panel, in 2 weeks we are with a notary, you have to invest? Why? There can be an invest now button on your website. You click this, there's a little pop-up, you invest some Ether, or you can use a stable coin like USDC or EuroC, and I'm done. So what the founder needs to do is he needs to set his offer. Like, this is my current market cap, so I'm selling tokens at this price. You can here see the cap table, you can see how many tokens are out there, and nicely, it's on the public blockchain, so it's verifiable. I can see exactly how many tokens exist. I can see exactly how many new tokens are issued now in this, I would not like to call it round, but in this continuous fundraising round, which is currently ongoing. So let's say a seed round, he puts $10 million as market cap. He wants to get funding up to 1 million, so everybody can just put money in until this limit is raised, until this limit is reached. Alternatively, if he wants to have smart money or like good investors who know what they're doing, he could also just send out personal invites to some investors who can say, you can invest for this price up to that much. And that's what I would like to have as founder. Either the continuous fundraising for my users, for my community, and for others, or those personal invites I can send to some investors. But it doesn't need to be around. So this invest now, click, transfer crypto, and actually own the shares. That's how I would like investments to be. So this is the token-based world. So why GmbH? Of course, people want limited liability. And those token-based projects and those DAOs don't have it. That's one of the biggest mistakes or shortcomings of TheDAO was that practically each of the DAO token members was fully liable for everything happening within the DAO. So lawyers told us this was like the really big mistake. So meaning if the DAO would have done something criminal, each one of those maybe 20,000 addresses would have been fully responsible for it without any limited liability. So that's what we don't want to have. So that's why, yes, you want to have an LLC or GmbH in between. You want to have the bridge to the legal legacy system like employment contracts, and a lot of the systems out there only works if we actually have a company, otherwise you cannot use much of it. And it is just the existing reality in which we live, and you're protected by the law. So the link is, we need tokens which can be converted to GmbH shares. And this is something which has been tried for a while, and over 1 year, I'm working with lawyers on this problem. And most of the solutions are solutions I don't like. The solutions are usually just go to Cayman Island, to Panama, go to Hong Kong, or some other places, create a company there, and then make the German GmbH 100% daughter. Just a spin-off, basically. And then you can do whatever you want there. You can tokenize it, it's free, and it's perfect. And that's actually what many other companies have done. You actually get tokens in a mother company sitting in some of those, let's call them friendly jurisdictions. But it means for our users, meaning founders, they would come to us and say, yes, I want to use it. We tell them the first thing you need to do is actually going to notary, create this company in some other legislation, and just say, here, transfer all your GmbH shares to, let's say, Panama Islands. So that's something we don't want for our funders. We don't want them to go just to other countries. So how can you do this actually in Germany? And after like 1 year working with the lawyers, they've come up with one idea, which I like a lot. I just make it now the short case. I'm not a lawyer, so this is not legal advice, and they're currently still working on it. The contracts are not done yet, but just the idea and very short. There is something which doesn't exist in every country, but in Germany it does. It's legally called an Auslobung. Auslobung means I'm making a one-sided contract. I promise something to the world. So I can say, for example, if someone comes with a Pokemon card to me, I give him $1,000. And if I sign this and make this a public promise, the so-called Auslobung, I am legally bound to do this. If someone comes to me with a Pokemon card, I have to give him $1,000. And I can do the same with GmbH shares. I can say, if someone comes to me with this token, I have to give him one GmbH share or create a new one as a company. And with this, you have a legally strong link between the token and the actually GmbH share. You can always exchange them. But this token lives on the public Ethereum chain, can live in the DeFi ecosystem. It's programmable equity, and you can do all those fun things with it, like investing quickly, exchanging it, getting liquidity. You can even have this token on Uniswap. Uniswap is a decentralized exchange. You still have to, of course, follow the law, meaning what the BaFin says about securities or Wertpapiere. But it's another story, and it's doable. It's not impossible. Of course, in contrast to many of the ICOs or DAOs, you have to know your customer, get their names, but that's just how it is. We have to live within the legal system if we have a GmbH. But as a summary, it is doable to have tokens linked to GmbH shares. And if you have done this, and if it works, then investments as a business angel, as retail or end users becomes extremely easy. You get liquidity because you can trade those tokens on decentralized exchanges such as Uniswap, or so-called automated market makers, because they are very clever algorithms to give you something which feels like a very deep order book, although it isn't. So all of those new inventions you see in the blockchain world, you can really make use of. So I'm very excited to introduce corpus.io. The product is not live yet. We expect it by end of Q3 that companies can use it, and they can start saying, I'm a fraction of my cap table, of my GmbH shares. I tokenize using corpus.io, make it investable for a wider audience. So I'm looking forward to this and see what it can do for not just the German ecosystem, also for investment coming from US investors. I recently heard one US investor really complaining he had to go to the notary, and all the process he had to make is so difficult compared to his Delaware Inc. investments. But they're actually starting to get used to tokens. So I think this can do a lot for the German ecosystem. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much.
Question.
So yeah, I actually heard we need to build something here. So maybe one short question. And I hope, Christian, we become a customer with 199 and the community. We try. So Q3, you said.
That's the goal, yeah.
Okay. One question. Okay. Very short, please.
Okay, I don't know if it's really short, but I'm trying my best, yeah. So thanks a lot. You talked a lot about the actually DAO as an inroad for investors. I would be interested in your opinion on the question of governance, because I think this is like one of the main promises of DAOs, and it would kind of disrupt the current way GmbHs function in terms of investor participation. And yeah, I mean, it's probably not a short answer or a short question, but I would be really interested in some words on that.
Yeah, in short, this is the response. So I think DAOs are good for public goods and governing them. But I don't think DAOs governance of DAOs is completely messy. I mean, you have thousands of people saying on Discord what they want. They vote. Sometimes you get less than 5% voting participation. So I still believe in DAOs. They have a great future for some use cases. But I think most of those startups and GmbHs who are targeting maybe a tech product, the development of this product is usually not well managed by a DAO. There, I think a strong CEO and CTO can do a much better job. But let's say it is now really, really big. Let's take Airbnb as an example. The product development should be done by a strong leadership team. Now, I think it would be much better off being owned by its hosts and users, and having a say in the change of the platform, and being something like a public good. And there, a DAO would be really good.
Okay, thank you very much, Christoph. And I think you're gonna, yeah, okay, we need to stop.